You have 10 minutes to verify my name. Elijah Brooks spoke with a calm that seemed almost out of place in the windswept parking lot outside the Atlantic Veterans Center. Sergeant Megan Walsh stood between him and the main entrance, while Officer Travis Walsh held Elijah's identification, invitation, and silent telephone in one hand. Behind them, Elijah's dark blue Chevrolet Silverado remained parked in space B1 beneath a white sign that read "Reserved for keynote speaker." The evidence was visible from every angle. Megan looked at the sign. Travis looked at the documents. Neither looked willing to accept what those things said. Elijah checked his watch. 9:50 in the morning. Inside the building, the scholarship ceremony would begin at 10 o'clock. Outside, the Atlantic wind pulled at the edges of his charcoal suit and sent small American flags snapping along the sidewalk. Through the glass entrance, families were taking their seats beneath banners honoring military service. A student choir waited near the stage. A polished wooden podium stood beneath the national flag. At the center of the front row, one chair remained empty. Hannah Price, the event coordinator, glanced down at her program and then toward the entrance. The name printed beneath the keynote address was Senior Chief Elijah Brooks. She called him again. In the parking lot, Elijah's telephone lit up in Travis's hand. Hannah Price, Atlantic Veterans Center. Travis read the screen, pressed the side button, and silenced the call. Elijah watched him do it. "That was your opportunity to confirm everything," he said. Travis returned the telephone to his pocket instead of Elijah's. "You are in no position to give instructions." Megan folded her arms. She had already decided that the invitation could have been borrowed, the military identification could have been misunderstood, and the reserved parking pass could have belonged to someone else. Each new fact became another object she needed to explain away. Elijah did not raise his voice. He did not step forward. He kept his hands visible and his posture steady, the way years of discipline had taught him to do when the person in front of him was searching for an excuse rather than an answer. 25 feet away, Jordan Ellis stood beside a registration table with his telephone held low near his chest. The college volunteer had seen Megan approach Elijah. He had watched Elijah present his documents. Now he quietly started recording. Above space B1, security camera P8 faced the entire scene. A small green light blinked beneath its lens. Travis began writing in a field notebook. He described Elijah as uncooperative. He wrote that the parking credentials could not be verified. He did not mention the unanswered call. He did not mention the name printed on the invitation. Inside, Hannah approached Commander Rachel Monroe near the stage. "Senior Chief Brooks is not answering," she said. Rachel looked toward the glass doors, concern replacing her professional smile. The master of ceremonies checked the clock. 8 minutes remained. Outside, Megan told Elijah that he would be taken somewhere else if his story could not be confirmed. Elijah looked past her at the flags, the entrance, and the building filled with people waiting for him. Then he looked directly at Travis. "You are writing your report before checking the truth." Travis stopped for half a second. Elijah checked his watch again. 7 minutes. The officers believed the clock was working against him. They had no idea it was counting down to the moment an entire room would stand when he entered. 28 minutes earlier, Elijah Brooks turned his dark blue Chevrolet Silverado into the entrance of the Atlantic Veterans Center as morning sunlight broke through a layer of coastal clouds. The building stood less than 2 miles from the Virginia Beach shoreline, its brick walls lined with banners honoring service members, military families, and students receiving scholarships that day. Small American flags marked the driveway, bending whenever the wind moved inland from the Atlantic. Elijah followed the directions in the event email until he reached the front parking section. Space B1 waited beside the main entrance beneath a sign that read "Reserved for keynote speaker." He checked the number against the parking instructions, then guided the truck carefully between the white lines. On the passenger seat rested everything he needed for the morning. A formal invitation bearing the name Senior Chief Elijah Brooks. A folded event program. A challenge coin carried through years of service. A small presentation box containing the insignia that would be used during the ceremony. Beneath those items lay a handwritten letter from 12-year-old Kayla Morgan, one of the scholarship recipients. She had written that her father was deployed overseas and that she wanted to become an engineer because he had taught her never to be afraid of difficult problems. Elijah had read the letter 3 times before leaving home. It was the reason he had accepted the invitation. He was not attending to discuss classified missions or collect applause. He wanted the students inside to understand that discipline was not something reserved for people in uniform. It was the decision to continue when fear, anger, or doubt offered an easier path. Elijah turned off the engine and looked toward the entrance. Volunteers carried boxes through the glass doors. Families posed for photographs near a bronze service memorial. A college student wearing a blue volunteer badge directed arriving guests toward registration. Elijah recognized him from an email as Jordan Ellis. Above the parking row, security camera P8 faced directly toward Space B1, its green indicator light blinking beneath the lens. Elijah stepped from the truck in a charcoal suit, white shirt, and dark tie. He had chosen civilian clothing because the organizers wanted the ceremony to focus on the scholarship recipients rather than military pageantry. He locked the truck, picked up the invitation and presentation box, and paused when the wind caught several papers near the sidewalk. An older veteran had dropped a folder while reaching for his cane. Elijah crossed the lane, gathered the pages before they scattered under the parked cars, and returned them in order. The man thanked him and noticed the challenge coin in Elijah's hand. "You serve?" he asked. Elijah gave a small smile. "A few years." The veteran laughed softly, sensing there was more behind the answer, but Elijah offered. "No rank and no history." His father had once told him that the strongest man in the room was usually the one who did not need everyone to know it. Elijah carried that lesson toward the building. Before he reached the sidewalk, Sergeant Megan Walsh stepped away from a traffic barricade and looked from him to the truck, then from the truck to the reserved sign. She did not greet him. She did not ask his name. Her first words arrived already shaped like a conclusion. "You cannot park there." "This space was assigned to me," Elijah said, keeping his voice even as the wind pressed against the edges of his suit jacket. Megan Walsh looked past him toward the Silver Dew, then back at the sign above parking space B1. Her expression did not soften. "That space is reserved for the keynote speaker." Elijah held out the invitation. His full name appeared beneath the Atlantic Veteran Center seal, followed by the words keynote address. Megan accepted it, but she spent more time studying Elijah than the document in her hand. "Where did you get this?" she asked. "It was sent to me by the event coordinator." "Anyone can print an invitation." Elijah reached into the inside pocket of his jacket slowly and removed his speaker credential. He kept every movement deliberate and visible. The badge carried the same name, the same event logo, and the same parking designation. Megan looked at it for less than 2 seconds. This could belong to someone else. Elijah glanced at the photograph printed beside his name. "It has my picture on it." The answer was factual, not sarcastic, but Megan treated it as a challenge. Her shoulders tightened. She stepped closer and asked why a keynote guest would arrive alone, without an escort, without a uniform, and in an ordinary pickup truck. Elijah listened until she finished. "None of those things determine whether this space was assigned to me." Megan raised her radio. Instead of calling Hannah Price or the event office, she requested another officer for what she described as a parking dispute involving questionable credentials. Elijah heard every word. He also saw the way Jordan Ellis had stopped near the registration table, watching from about 25 feet away. Above them, camera P8 continued recording. A small green light blinked beneath the lens. Elijah could have ended the argument by naming his unit, listing his rank, or demanding that Megan speak with someone senior. He did none of those things. His father had taught him that dignity became most visible when anger offered an easier answer. "Please contact Hannah Price," Elijah said. "Her number is printed at the bottom of the invitation." Megan did not look. "I will decide who needs to be contacted." The statement carried more weight than the situation required. Elijah recognized the pattern immediately. The issue was no longer a parking space. It was control. Megan had formed an assumption, and every piece of evidence was being forced to fit around it. Through the glass doors, volunteers moved toward the auditorium as the beginning of the ceremony drew closer. The sound of a microphone being tested drifted across the sidewalk. Elijah checked his watch. 17 minutes remained before his scheduled address. A patrol vehicle turned into the lot and stopped behind the Silverado. Officer Travis Walsh stepped out, adjusted his duty belt, and walked toward them. Megan gave him a brief summary before Elijah could speak. She said a man was refusing to leave a reserved space and presenting documents that could not be trusted. Travis looked at Elijah, then at the truck, then at the invitation still in Megan's hand. "You expect us to believe you are the keynote speaker?" he asked. Elijah met his eyes. "I expect you to verify the name." Travis gave a short, humorless smile. People who belong at events like this usually do not need to explain themselves. Elijah looked toward the building filled with military families, then back at the two officers. People who are doing their jobs usually check the evidence before deciding what it means. Travis held out his hand for Elijah's identification, and Elijah provided it without hesitation. The card was current. The photograph matched. The name matched the invitation, the speaker credential, and the parking assignment. Travis examined each item, but instead of using the information to resolve the situation, he searched for another reason to doubt it. "Why are you carrying military identification to a civilian scholarship event?" he asked. Elijah looked at him steadily. "Because I am an active duty service member." Megan exchanged a glance with her husband. She had not told Travis that the speaker credential included Elijah's photograph. She had not mentioned the telephone number printed on the invitation. She had only described a suspicious man refusing to leave a restricted parking space. Travis asked Elijah to unlock the Silverado. Elijah declined. "There is no legal reason to search my vehicle." Travis stepped closer to the driver's door and looked through the window. On the passenger seat, he saw the folded program, the challenge coin, the presentation box, and Kayla Morgan's handwritten letter. None of it appeared dangerous. None of it supported Megan's claim. Still, he asked Elijah what was inside the box. "An item for the ceremony," Elijah answered. "You can confirm that with the event coordinator." The wind carried music from the building as the student choir began its final rehearsal. Elijah checked his watch. 14 minutes remained. Inside the center, Hannah Price stood near the stage holding her telephone. She had already sent 2 messages asking whether Elijah needed assistance finding the entrance. Commander Rachel Monroe looked toward the empty chair in the front row and asked a volunteer to check the lobby. Outside, Jordan remained near the registration table, recording quietly as Travis placed Elijah's identification on the hood of the patrol vehicle. "Until we confirm who you are not entering that building," Travis said. Elijah pointed toward the number on the invitation. "The confirmation is 1 telephone call away." Megan raised her chin. "You do not control how we conduct this." Elijah did not argue. He looked at the body camera secured to Travis's uniform, then at camera P8 above the parking row. "Then record that I requested verification and that you refused." Travis's expression hardened. "You are becoming confrontational." Elijah's voice remained unchanged. "Disagreement is not confrontation." The statement drew Jordan's attention. He moved several feet closer, careful not to interfere. Megan noticed him and ordered him to return to the registration area. Jordan obeyed, but he did not stop recording. Elijah's telephone began ringing inside his jacket. He asked permission to answer it. Travis removed the telephone himself and looked at the screen. Hannah Price, Atlantic Veteran Center. The name remained visible for several seconds. Elijah said, "That is the person I asked you to contact." Travis silenced the call. The screen went dark. 10 minutes remained before the keynote address. Megan told Elijah that he would be temporarily detained while they investigated possible misuse of military credentials and unauthorized access to a reserved area. Elijah placed his hands where both officers could see them. He offered no resistance and made no sudden movement. His calm seemed to frustrate them more than anger would have. Travis began writing in his field notebook, recording that Elijah had refused lawful instructions and attempted to influence the officers with claims of military status. Elijah listened to every word. "You are writing the conclusion before completing the verification," he said. Travis continued writing. Megan stood between Elijah and the entrance. The telephone rang again in Travis's hand. This time, he did not even look at the name before rejecting the call. The second unanswered call left a voicemail notification glowing on Elijah's screen, but Travis placed the telephone face down on the hood of the patrol vehicle before the message could play. Megan asked Elijah to stand beside the passenger door while she contacted dispatch. Her report was brief and carefully incomplete. She said they had detained a man occupying a restricted parking space who might be misusing military credentials. She did not read Elijah's name. She did not mention the invitation, the speaker badge, or the calls from the Atlantic Veterans Center. Elijah listened as she reduced the facts until only suspicion remained. "Please provide dispatch with my full name," he said. Megan ignored him. Travis continued writing in his field notebook. The words came quickly now, as though repetition could make them true. He described Elijah as increasingly uncooperative. He wrote that Elijah had challenged lawful instructions and attempted to use military status to obtain special treatment. Elijah looked at the body camera attached to Travis's uniform. Its indicator light remained active. "Record that I gave you valid identification," Elijah said. "Record that the invitation matches my name. Record that you declined 2 verification calls." Travis stopped writing long enough to look at him. "You do not dictate my report." "No," Elijah replied. "The evidence does." The wind carried the final notes of the choir rehearsal through the entrance doors. Inside, Hannah Price checked the time and called Elijah for a third time. The telephone vibrated against the metal hood, then fell silent. A new voicemail appeared. Travis glanced at Megan. She gave a small nod. He unlocked the screen using the notification preview and played the message on speaker. Hannah's worried voice cut through the parking lot. "Senior Chief Brooks, this is Hannah Price. The ceremony begins in 6 minutes. Commander Monroe is looking for you. Please call me immediately." Jordan's telephone captured every word from 25 feet away. Camera P8 captured Megan's expression as she heard the name. Travis's body camera recorded the silence that followed. For the first time, neither officer had an immediate explanation. Elijah watched them recognize the connection, then watched them resist it. Megan finally told dispatch that event staff might be searching for someone with the same name. She added that the detained man's credentials had not yet been authenticated. Elijah looked toward the entrance. "You just heard the event coordinator identify me by rank and name." Megan lowered her radio. "That message does not establish that you are the person she meant." The statement sounded weak even to Travis, but he returned to his notebook and continued writing. Their uncertainty had become something more dangerous than the original assumption. They were no longer trying to determine who Elijah was. They were trying to protect what they had already done. For minutes remained. Inside the auditorium, Commander Rachel Monroe left the stage and crossed the lobby toward the front doors. Outside, Elijah stopped offering explanations. He stood calmly beside the patrol vehicle, hands visible, eyes steady, while 3 separate cameras preserved the story the officers were preparing to deny. Megan believed his silence meant the pressure was working. Travis believed the report would speak louder than the man standing in front of him. Neither understood that Elijah had spent years learning when words were useful and when silence allowed the truth to gather strength. Then dispatch returned to the radio with a new message. Event staff had provided a description of the missing keynote speaker. Megan reached for the volume control, but this time the message had already begun. Dispatch spoke clearly through Megan's radio. Event staff is searching for Senior Chief Elijah Brooks, a black man approximately 6 feet 1 inch tall, wearing a charcoal suit and driving a dark blue Chevrolet Silverado. The description matched the man standing less than 5 feet away. It matched the identification in Travis's hand, the invitation on the hood, and the truck parked beneath the keynote speaker sign. For one long second, the wind seemed to carry every excuse out of the parking lot. Megan looked at Elijah. Travis looked at the Silverado. Jordan kept recording. "Confirm the first name," Megan said into the radio. Dispatch repeated it. "Elijah." Megan asked for the last name. "Brooks." Travis glanced at his notebook, where he had already described Elijah as an unidentified man using questionable military credentials. The page no longer looked official. It looked dangerous. 3 minutes remained before the scheduled address. Inside the center, Hannah Price stood near the auditorium doors while the master of ceremonies prepared to delay the program. Families shifted in their seats. Scholarship recipients whispered to one another beneath the stage lights. Commander Rachel Monroe crossed the lobby with purpose, carrying a printed photograph of Elijah that had been included in the ceremony packet. Outside, Megan lowered her radio but did not return Elijah's documents. "A description is not final confirmation," she said. Elijah answered without anger. "It was enough for you to suspect me. Why is it not enough for you to correct yourself?" Travis closed his notebook. "We still need to establish how you obtained these materials." Elijah looked at the invitation. "They were mailed to my home by the organization inside that building." Travis asked for proof of the mailing. Elijah turned his eyes toward the body camera. "You have ignored the event coordinator, dispatch, my identification, the parking assignment, and the voice message using my name and rank. At this point, you are not waiting for proof. You are waiting for an excuse." Megan's expression tightened. She instructed Travis to place the documents in an evidence envelope until a supervisor arrived. Travis hesitated. The movement revealed the first crack between them. He had supported Megan's conclusion when the facts seemed distant. Now every fact stood directly in front of him. "Maybe we should contact the center," he said quietly. Megan looked at him sharply. "We already requested confirmation." Elijah heard the difference. She had not requested confirmation. She had reported suspicion and withheld the details that could resolve it. 2 minutes remained. Through the glass doors, Rachel saw the dark blue truck in space BE1. Then she saw Elijah beside the patrol vehicle. Her pace quickened. Hannah followed several steps behind her. Jordan shifted his telephone to keep them in view. Megan noticed the approaching women and stepped toward the entrance as though she could still control what happened next. Rachel pushed open the door. The coastal wind lifted the edge of her uniform jacket as she crossed the sidewalk. She did not look at the parking sign. She did not need the invitation. Her eyes went directly to Elijah. "Senior Chief Brooks," she called, her voice carrying across the lot. "We have been looking everywhere for you." Megan turned toward the building, still hoping Rachel meant someone else. Rachel walked past her without slowing and stopped in front of Elijah. Then she looked at the documents in Travis's hand, the unanswered telephone on the hood, and the field notebook pressed against his side. "Why," she asked, "are you holding the keynote speaker outside his own ceremony?" Rachel Monroe held Travis's gaze until he lowered the documents. "Return everything to Senior Chief Brooks," she said. Her voice was controlled, but the authority behind it left no room for debate. Travis handed Elijah the invitation, military identification, speaker credential, and telephone one item at a time. Megan stepped forward and began explaining that they had received conflicting information, but Rachel stopped her with a simple question. "Which information conflicted?" Megan looked toward the Silverado, the parking sign, and the documents now back in Elijah's hands. No answer came. Hannah Price joined them, visibly relieved. She confirmed that Elijah had been assigned Space B1, that his photograph appeared in the event security packet, and that she had called him 3 times. She also confirmed that the Atlantic Veteran Center had provided local officers with a guest list the previous evening. Travis glanced toward Megan. Megan looked away. Elijah checked his watch. Less than 1 minute remained before the scheduled address. Rachel asked whether he wanted the program delayed. Elijah shook his head. The students have waited long enough. He turned toward Jordan and noticed the telephone still recording. Keep the original file, he said. Do not edit it, and do not post it yet. Jordan nodded, surprised that Elijah had noticed him at all. Elijah then looked toward camera P8 and the active body camera on Travis's uniform. Those recordings need to be preserved. Rachel agreed immediately. Megan tried once more to frame the incident as a misunderstanding. Elijah met her eyes. A misunderstanding ends when the facts become clear. You continued after the invitation, the identification, the telephone calls, and dispatch all confirmed the same name. Megan said nothing. Travis closed his notebook and held it against his side, but the pages inside had already captured the version he wanted the truth to become. Elijah did not demand an apology. He did not raise his voice. He simply walked toward the entrance with Rachel and Hannah beside him. The glass doors opened, and the sound of the auditorium reached them at once. Families whispered beneath the stage lights. Scholarship recipients sat in the first 2 rows. The master of ceremonies stood at the podium, preparing to announce a delay. Hannah gave him a quick signal. He looked toward Elijah, relief spreading across his face. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, please rise for our keynote speaker, Senior Chief Elijah Brooks of the United States Navy SEAL community. Chairs moved across the floor as hundreds of people stood. The applause began softly, then filled the room. Through the glass behind them, Megan and Travis remained in the parking lot beside the patrol vehicle. They watched the man they had described as suspicious walk down the center aisle while military families, veterans, and students rose to honor him. Elijah reached the podium and placed Kayla Morgan's letter beside his prepared remarks. He looked across the room, then briefly toward the doors. The reveal had changed how the officers saw him. It had not changed who he was. Before I speak about service, he began, I want to speak about discipline. Not the discipline to prove that you are stronger than someone else, but the discipline to choose truth when anger offers you something faster. Outside, Travis looked down at his unfinished report. Inside, every camera had stopped serving suspicion and started preserving accountability. Elijah completed his address without mentioning Megan or Travis by name. He spoke about students carrying burdens no one could see, military families adapting to long absences, and the discipline required to choose principle over impulse. When Kayla Morgan received her scholarship, he handed her the small presentation box and told her that difficult problems did not become smaller simply because people doubted her ability to solve them. The applause that followed belonged to the students, not to him, and that was exactly how Elijah wanted it. After the ceremony, Commander Rachel Monroe led him to a private conference room near the administrative offices. Lieutenant Aaron Keller was already waiting beside a long table with Hannah Price and a courthouse security supervisor. Aaron had received a preliminary report from dispatch, but Elijah asked him not to rely on summaries. Preserve the original evidence first, he said. Interpret it later. Aaron nodded and opened a formal incident log. Elijah listed each source in order. Camera P8 had recorded the parking space and the exchange. Travis's body camera had captured the conversation and the unanswered calls. Jordan Ellis had recorded from the registration table. Hannah's call history showed 3 attempts to reach Elijah. Dispatch had repeated his full name and description before Commander Monroe arrived. Finally, Travis's field notebook contained a version written before the officers completed verification. Aaron asked whether Elijah wanted to file a complaint. Yes, Elijah answered, but this cannot become a story about what happened when the person being questioned has rank. The room became quiet. Elijah placed his military identification on the table, then moved it aside. My rank made it easier for someone powerful to confirm me. That is not the standard. The standard must protect the person who has no commander walking through the door. Rachel watched him carefully. She had seen senior personnel demand immediate consequences for far less. Elijah demanded something harder, a process that could survive scrutiny. He requested that Megan and Travis submit separate statements before viewing any recording. He asked that their preliminary notes be locked against revision. He requested independent interviews with Jordan and Hannah, and he asked Internal Affairs to review previous complaints involving both officers. Aaron agreed and contacted Captain Laura Bennett, who ordered the body camera files uploaded to a restricted evidence server. The security supervisor preserved camera P at 8. Jordan arrived with his telephone and transferred the original recording without editing it. Outside the conference room, Megan and Travis waited under separate supervision. They could no longer compare explanations or reshape details together. Travis looked toward the closed door, his field notebook now sealed inside an evidence envelope. Megan stared through the lobby. Windows at Space B's 1, where Elijah's truck still stood beneath the sign she had refused to believe. Aaron asked Elijah whether he wanted the officers removed from duty pending review. Elijah answered carefully. Follow the policy. Do not protect them, and do not punish them for public satisfaction. Let the evidence decide. That answer unsettled the room more than anger would have. Elijah had every opportunity to use his title as a weapon. Instead, he used the truth as a standard. The real reversal was not that the officers had discovered he was a Navy SEAL. It was that the man they had denied fairness was now insisting that even they receive a fair process. For weeks later, the Atlantic Veterans Center parking lot looked almost unchanged. The same coastal wind moved through the rows of small American flags. The same white sign stood above Space B1. Camera P8 still faced the entrance, but its recordings were now automatically preserved whenever an officer reported a detention on the property. The changes had begun before the investigation was complete. Captain Laura Bennett reviewed the body camera footage, dispatch traffic, call records, Jordan Ellis's video, and the original pages from Travis Walsh's field notebook. The evidence showed that Elijah had provided valid identification, a matching invitation, a speaker credential, and a direct method of verification. It also showed Megan withholding important details from dispatch and Travis writing conclusions before checking the facts. Their separate statements contradicted each other on several points. Neither account matched the recordings. Internal Affairs then examined earlier complaints involving the couple. A pattern slowly emerged. Megan often reached a conclusion before verification. Travis regularly translated her assumptions into official language. Calm questions became alleged defiance. Requests for clarification became suspicious behavior. Opportunities to confirm identities were described as distractions. Several complaints that had once been dismissed were reopened, and former complainants were contacted for new interviews. Megan and Travis remained suspended while the department's independent review board considered disciplinary action. Elijah did not attend the hearings unless his testimony was required. He refused interview requests that focused only on his military service. Whenever reporters asked how two officers could treat a Navy SEAL that way, he corrected the question. The problem is not that they failed to recognize a Navy SEAL, he said. The problem is that they believed respect depended on recognizing one. Lieutenant Aaron Keller helped introduce temporary safeguards while permanent policies were drafted. Officers assigned to public events would receive verified guest lists before their shifts. Declined verification calls would be documented. Body camera footage would be locked before officers reviewed recordings or completed final statements. Married officers could not jointly control a disputed encounter without independent supervision. None of those rules guaranteed perfect judgment, but they made it harder for assumption to become an unquestioned record. Several months later, Elijah returned to the center for a student leadership workshop. Kayla Morgan met him near the entrance, carrying a notebook filled with engineering sketches. She told him that she still remembered his speech about discipline. Elijah smiled and asked what the word meant to her now. Kayla thought for a moment. Doing the right thing even when nobody would blame you for being angry, she said. Elijah looked across the parking lot toward Space B1. That answer mattered more than any apology or headline. The officers had believed his title was the reason they should respect him. The investigation revealed something simpler and more important. His rank had never created his dignity. It had only exposed the dignity they had refused to see before they knew his name.